2 million years ago, a small creature stood on the African savanna, not quite human, not quite ape, but what secret made them the first spark of intelligence in our story? Homo habilis, known as the handy man, lived nearly 2 million years ago. They were among the earliest members of our human family, walking upright, shaping tools, and leaving a lasting mark on the savannas of Africa. Unlike the apes before them, Homo habilis dared to experiment. Their hands, more precise than their ancestors, carved sharp flakes of stone. With each strike, they unlocked new possibilities, hunting, scavenging, and defending themselves from predators. Life on the African savanna was brutal. Lions, saber-toothed cats, and massive hyenas roamed freely. For Homo habilis, survival meant courage. Every day was a battle to find food before becoming food themselves. Yet, amidst the danger, innovation thrived. Stone tools gave Homo habilis a new edge. A simple sharp edge meant bones could be cracked open, marrow could be eaten, and meat scraps could be claimed from carcasses abandoned by predators. For the first time in history, brains began to grow, not just in size, but in complexity. Meat provided energy-rich nutrition, fueling the gradual expansion of intelligence that would one day define us as humans. But Homo habilis were not kings of their world. They remained small, standing barely over a meter tall. Their bodies were fragile compared to predators, forcing them to rely more on wit than on brute strength. Gathering was as vital as hunting. Roots, fruits, and tubers filled their diets, offering essential survival when meat was scarce. Yet the balance between foraging and tool-using revealed a remarkable shift. Adaptability was becoming their true weapon. In groups, Homo habilis were stronger. Cooperation gave them safety in numbers. Sharing food and working together meant survival chances doubled. The savanna taught them the oldest truth: alone, they were vulnerable. Together, they endured. The African landscape shaped every moment. Endless grassland stretched beneath a burning sun. Waterholes drew predators and prey alike. And each day demanded strategy. For Homo habilis, survival meant learning the savanna's dangerous rhythm. Unlike the apes of the forests, Homo habilis walked the open plains. This was no accident. Standing upright freed their hands, widened their vision, and turned the horizon into a vast stage for human evolution. Still, predators struck often. A careless step, a slow reaction, or a miscalculation meant death. Fear was constant, but fear also sharpened their awareness. Every sound, every movement, trained their minds for survival. Over time, sharp stones became multi-purpose. They cut wood, shaped branches, and scraped hides. These humble tools gave them more than survival, they gave them control. A hint of dominance in a world ruled by giants. Each discovery passed through generations. Young ones watched the elders strike stone against stone, learning skill and patience. Knowledge was no longer instinct, it was culture. A seed planted deep in the roots of humanity. This was the dawn of intelligence. Not yet language, not yet fire, but the foundation of something far greater. A species learning to change its world, instead of being forever changed by it. Archaeological sites reveal their secrets. Scattered bones, stone flakes, and signs of butchery whisper stories from 2 million years ago. Each artifact is a frozen moment of human awakening, preserved in the African soil. Compared to Neanderthals or modern humans, Homo habilis was primitive, but in their simplicity lay genius. Every chipped stone, every cooperative hunt, was a step forward, small, but irreversible, toward becoming fully human. Predators feared claws and teeth. Homo habilis discovered a different kind of power, the power of thought. Tools replaced fangs, teamwork replaced brute strength, and slowly, a fragile creature began rewriting nature's rules. Still, their lives were short. Disease, hunger, and constant danger kept lifespans low, but each life carried the burden of survival, and in that struggle, intelligence grew sharper, stronger, unstoppable. This wasn't just survival, this was the origins of strategy, of cooperation, of innovation. In Homo habilis, we glimpsed the first fragile steps toward what would become human civilization. Bones cracked open by stone flakes revealed a hidden treasure, marrow. Rich in fat and energy, it became a vital source of nutrition. This discovery was more than survival, it was the beginning of resourcefulness defining human progress. Homo habilis weren't masters of fire yet, but perhaps they watched flames with awe. Lightning strikes and wildfires lit the savanna. To them, fire was both terrifying and mysterious, a glimpse of a power yet to be tamed. Shelter was crucial. They sought caves, river banks, and rocky overhangs to rest. These places not only shielded them from predators but also became gathering spots, where bonds formed and knowledge silently passed from one generation to the next. Social bonds mattered. Survival wasn't only about tools, it was about family, cooperation, and shared struggle. Mothers carried young, elders guided the group, and together, they stood a better chance against the wild threats of Africa. Homo habilis faced droughts and scarce resources. Seasons of hunger tested their resilience. Adaptability became their shield, shifting diets, traveling farther, and relying on teamwork. Without adaptability, they would have vanished. With it, humanity's spark endured. Scavenging wasn't shameful, it was survival. They followed predators, waiting for scraps. A leftover rib or marrow-filled bone was life-saving. In this desperation, a lesson echoed: intelligence wasn't about dominance, it was about making the most of every chance. Slowly, tool-making evolved. Flakes grew sharper, stones became more deliberate, and their skill showed foresight. Each chipped edge reflected imagination, an ability to see not just what a rock was, but what it could become. Hands were everything. With opposable thumbs, Homo habilis shaped tools, carried food, and held infants. Their hands were more than anatomy, they were instruments of change, bridges between raw survival and the first sparks of creativity. Eyes scanned horizons for danger, ears caught the faintest rustle, brains processed threats and opportunities quicker. The savanna didn't just demand awareness, it carved it into them, forging sharper minds in a world full of predators. Homo habilis taught us the earliest truth: intelligence wasn't born in comfort, it was forged in hunger, fear, and endless danger. Out of struggle, the first steps toward human brilliance were carved in Africa's wild heart. Predators shaped them as much as tools did. The roar of lions, the shadows of giant cats, forced Homo habilis to think differently. They became cautious, strategic, and united. Danger wasn't just threat, it was a teacher. Evidence suggests they traveled in small groups, each member with a role. Some gathered, others scouted, while toolmakers chipped stones. This wasn't chaos, it was the first glimpse of organized living, a prelude to future societies. They weren't alone. Other human cousins roamed Africa: Paranthropus, Australopithecus. Competition for food and land was fierce, but Homo habilis adaptability set them apart. Where others specialized, they experimented, and that difference decided who survived and who faded. Weather shaped destiny. Shifting climates brought new challenges. Droughts forced migrations, while lush periods allowed growth. The environment was never stable, teaching Homo habilis that survival meant flexibility, not rigidity, in a world that changed without warning. Their brains, though smaller than ours, were larger than apes. This expansion wasn't random, it came from diet, tools, and survival strategies. Each generation carried slightly more potential, slowly building the blueprint of human intelligence. Imagine them at night, huddled together, eyes glowing in firelight reflected from distant wildfires. Fear lingered, but so did wonder. In that wonder lay the seed of curiosity, the same spark that drives us even today. The African savanna wasn't just their home, it was their crucible. Every predator, every drought, every hardship forged resilience. And in that endless struggle, Homo habilis learned the oldest lesson: survival is innovation in disguise. Homo habilis lived for survival, not legacy. Yet unknowingly, they left behind the first chapters of human history. Stones they shaped, bones they cracked, and lessons they endured paved the way for every human that followed. They may not have built cities, but they built something greater, the foundation of intelligence. Without Homo habilis, there would be no language, no fire, no civilizations. Their survival was the fragile bridge to everything we are. Through bones and tools, archaeologists reconstruct their lives. Each fossil unearthed is more than a bone, it is a voice across 2 million years, whispering stories of struggle, ingenuity, and the fragile dawn of humanity. Though their species vanished, their legacy did not. Homo habilis gave rise to Homo erectus, who mastered fire, and eventually to Homo sapiens, us. Every discovery they made echoed across evolution, shaping who we would become. Their disappearance remains a mystery. Perhaps climate shifts, competition, or their own limitations ended them. But in evolution, endings aren't failures, they're transitions. Homo habilis didn't die in vain, they handed the torch to future humans. Every chipped stone, every scavenged bone, every shared meal was history in the making. They didn't know it, but they were writing the first lines of humanity's story, lines that would one day lead to civilization. Even now, their story matters. It reminds us that intelligence was never guaranteed. It had to be earned. Through blood, hunger, and relentless struggle. Our comfort today was bought with their survival yesterday. The name, Homo habilis, means handy man. But they were more than that. They were dreamers of survival, inventors of possibility, pioneers of the unknown. With stone in hand, they carved the dawn of humanity. On the African savanna, 2 million years ago, humanity began its climb. Small, fragile, and vulnerable, Homo habilis lit the first spark. And from that spark, the fire of human intelligence would eventually blaze across the world. The story of Homo habilis is the story of us. If their journey amazed you, imagine what other secrets lie buried in time. Subscribe, and join us as we keep unearthing the forgotten origins of humanity.